everyone to get on. I am really excited because I want to talk about why self-help sometimes doesn't work, and it's really annoying and it's really stressful at times because you can do all the things, you can get all the mentors, you can get all this stuff, and it sometimes doesn't work. So what I want to talk about is the difference between when they're dealing with mindset or skill set. I want to go over this part right here, which is your rules. Now, your rules create your standards, and your standards create your boundaries. So if you know your rules, you can create your standards, and your standards create your boundaries. But if you don't know your rules, then you have no standards, and you have no clue what your boundaries are. Like, it's just that simple. So as a recovering people pleaser, like, we are talking decades of constantly being a people pleaser. Like, oh, you want my firstborn? Like, absolutely, here you go. Like, of course, why wouldn't I? Okay, so if that's you, stick around. Or, because we're going to go over how you stop that. Because I knew I didn't want to be that. I knew I didn't want that. I knew that that was not benefiting my life. But at the same time, how do you stop it, right? Like, what do you do to stop it? So, in everybody that goes into the self-help development world, they're looking truly at three things. Everybody starts with self-help because they're missing something in their life. They want more money, they want a better physical health, some way, some shape, some form. They want to feel better, they want to look better, whatever it is, or they want better relationships, okay? It's always those three things. Everybody, when they go into the self-development world, when they're looking to be a better person, it is those three things. Now, the thing is that is just a skill set. All of those are just skill sets. Every single one of them. So it's like, if you want a better relationship, okay, learn how to communicate. That's it. If it was that simple, then all you'd have to do is go watch a video, go figure out how to communicate, go figure out how to make money, and boom, like, go figure out how to do crunches in the gym. There you go. Better body, better relationships, more money, your life is fixed. So if it was that simple, what's the problem? Like, clearly that's not the problem. Otherwise, self-help wouldn't be as big as it is. Now that gets us into mindset. Mindset is the mental, the spiritual, and the emotional. These are all the things that we're actually dealing with when you're trying to get down here. So it's actually none of this stuff that's the problem. Rarely, very, very rarely, if you want to fix something in your life, very rarely is it down here. It's usually up here. Now, we can go into these other areas, but I really, really wanted to talk about this one because this one I find so fascinating. Your rules create your standards, and your standards create your boundaries. So if you are a person who has no boundaries, do you know what your standards are? Do you know what your rules are? Do you know even what rules, like where would you even find those rules? Okay, so if I said, what are your non-negotiable things? What are absolutely non-negotiable for you as a person? All right, the way that you find this is I love to talk about, there's a few different things that you can look at. Everybody's very individual, and that's what makes them your rules. Is a lot of times people grow up with their parents' rules, right? Like, there's a right way to load the dishwasher. There is a right way. Oh, this is the way our family does it. And so you grow up that's the way. Like, you just know that's the way we do it. In a healthy childhood, in a healthy upbringing, you would be allowed, like, yes, you have to follow the rules of the family, because otherwise now you just have straight chaos. If everybody's just doing what they want, you have chaos. So yes, you have to follow the general idea of your parents. If you have a healthy upbringing, your parents slowly start to hand over, okay, well, what do you want? Okay, how do you want your life to look like? Like, you still have to keep in balance with the family because we're all living together and we can't just have like Lord of the Flies. But what does it look like for you to start doing things your way. That's a healthy upbringing. However, some of us did not grow up in a healthy upbringing. We did not have that ability to create what it is that we like, our rules, because our upbringing was chaotic and toxic. And it could even could have been to the point where like it was authoritarian and control and like, you will do it this way. This is the right way to do it. And so if you had that experience, then trying to build your own rules and your own standards and your own boundaries, like completely non-existent, because you don't have that freedom. Where in childhood, that's where you're supposed to figure it out. That's when you're supposed to figure out what it is that you like, that you need. So where I like to start, because it's a super, super easy one, and a lot of people know it, is your love language. If you don't know, put in the comments if you know what your love language is, right? Like if you're like, I'm gifts, I'm physical touch, I'm words of affirmation, right? That's a rule that everybody has. One of those is going to be you. That's going to be the way you show love. That's going to be the way that you give love or you receive love. So that's a really easy one. Another one is your personality type, right? Like, are you a higher energy? Are you a lower energy? Are you an inward person or are you more of an out expressing person? These are your rules, okay? Other ones are your top needs. Now, there are 6 of them, but typically the 6 needs, you can narrow it down to the top 4, which is variety, consistency, love and connection, and significance. And this is how typically we pick like jobs. This is how typically we pick things of what's important to us, is because a need that is not being filled will start to gravitate towards it. So if you were raised in a family that was very chaotic, right? It's just mass chaos all the way around. You didn't feel safe, like all that kind of stuff. You might crave consistency as a very high need. And if any time you start having like it's not very consistent, you will feel very unsafe. And so you will start to like, no, we need to lock this down because we have to have consistency. So that's a need of yours. So when you start bringing all of these together, you start creating what your rules are. You start creating your rules and you start creating your standards, and now you can create your boundaries. So I'm going to use myself as an example. All right, so for me, my personality is I'm technically a very introspective person. So I am very introspective, which means one of my rules is I need a lot of alone time. Like I just need that. And I have in relationships, I have had to express that is one of my needs. And it just is. Like, I like to have alone time, and there's nothing wrong with that. Other people who are very outward expressing, they like to talk ideas out, they like to think ideas, they like to be with a lot of people. Again, there's nothing wrong with it. These are just our rules. And the rules create our standards, and our standards create our boundaries. So another thing about me is my love language is acts of service. Okay? So I'm a very introspective person, acts of service, right? Another thing is I have a very high need. One of my 4 needs is to have significance. Okay, so with this, part of my rules are I need some alone time. I need my partner and people in my life to help me in things that are important to me. And I need a career that shows significance. Now, how does that help, right? Like, how does that show who we are, what we are, why we would even need to know that? And that is why when I take those rules, now when I start to get into relationships, I have an idea of what I'm looking for. I have an idea of the person, and of not only the person I'm looking for, but when somebody says, hey, what is it that you like? I can say, you know what? I really like some alone time, and that has nothing to do with you. And I like acts of service, and that's what I need. And it has nothing to do with like, it's not playing games, it's just building healthy relationships. And so then if I get in a relationship with somebody and they're like, yeah, I know you like alone time, but that makes me feel uncomfortable and it makes me feel unwanted and it makes me feel abandoned. I Now we can have that conversation because I know that is a non-negotiable for me. And it really has nothing to do with the other person. And the interesting thing is now because we've created this, now because I know who I am, we now know the stories, the lies, and the meanings that I have put on different things. Because if I didn't know my rules, then I couldn't create my standards, and that means I couldn't create my boundaries. So now I can start to see, well, why don't I have good relationships? What's going on with my relationships that I'm not creating these good relationships? Or why do I feel like I can't? What story am I telling myself that I feel like I can't get my needs met? Or I feel really bad when I take alone time. That's a story because it's not against anybody. It's just a need I have. So I really would love to hear in the comments or in the messages how you guys understanding your rules, then now if that's giving you any of the aha moments to create your boundaries. Because there's so many times that we talk about mindset, right? We talk about like, I want a better relationship and I'm just going to think positive, or I'm going to use words of affirmations, or I'm going to like put it out there in the universe. And we watch all this stuff about having great relationships and communication. But if you have no idea who you are and you have no idea like what it is that you want, why do you think you could ever create an amazing relationship? I love this idea that imagine if you were looking for a house, right? And you need a place to stay. So you go to the realtor and you're like, I need a home. I need a place to stay. And they say, great, what are you looking for? And you're like, it could be an apartment, it could be a studio, I don't know, what is out there? Like, what's out there? And they would look at you kind of like, well, what are your rules? Like, what are your non-negotiables? And you'd be like, oh, I don't know, whatever. Like, whatever. Just, yeah. They look at you like you're crazy. They'd be like, look, I got thousands of options here. We got to narrow it down. It's the same in relationships. It's the same when you're trying to figure out what makes you happy, to figure out your purpose, to figure out your passion, to figure out relationships, to figure out what it is that brings you joy to this life. Like if you're trying to figure out your purpose or your passion and you have no idea what your rules are, start there. Because that's going to help you figure out the road to go down. And just with the idea that like trying to find a house, but having absolutely no rules to narrow down what you're looking for, you would never do that because the realtor would look at you like you're crazy. They'd be like, well, do you want a studio? Do you want a 5-bedroom house? Like, do you want an apartment? Do you want a yard? Like, what are we looking for? And if you don't know who you are, like you don't know if you're an introvert or an extrovert, you don't know if you're a person who is a high energy person or a low energy person, or a person, what your top needs are. If you don't know that, it is the same thing as giving a realtor, like, whatever, just find me a place to live. And they'll be like, well, what's your budget? And you're like, whatever. Like, it doesn't work that way. All right. So if you guys have any questions about your mental awareness, like your rules, your standards, your boundaries, how this works in relationships, how this works in your physical health, how this works in knowing your purpose and your passion, just put it in the comments because I love talking about this stuff. And so I really, really wanted to hop on today and I really wanted to talk to you guys about knowing your rules, knowing your standards, figuring out your boundaries so you can find your purpose, have better relationships. If you're trying to find out like what makes you happy in life, this is where you start. Because I'm telling you, for so long, I went for decades, and really truly decades. And I just was so depressed and I felt anxious and all the things, like all the things. And when I figured out that I was this type of person and this was a need of mine, now I could tell my partner, now I could even tell myself, like, figure out where I was like not meeting those needs, and then have the people in my life also help me with that. So it was a great time spending with you guys. I really appreciate all the likes and all the comments and everything. So you guys all have an amazing night. And we will see you